Hello, everyone. As you're joining our Zoom, welcome. My name is Izzy Klein, and as a member of the Jewish Democratic Council of America's Board of Directors and the political chair, I want to welcome you to today's panel, Convention Debrief, Time to Do Something. Last week in Chicago, or virtually for some of you, we witnessed a fully energized Democratic Party, ready to win this election in 10 weeks. We heard from Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz about their vision for the future, which aligns with our vision as the future of Jewish Dems. Every key issue, support of democracy, abortion access, Israel, the economy, efforts to combat hate, gun violence, and climate change, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz stand with the vast majority of Jewish voters, and we're proud to stand with them. I was in Chicago and proud to join with nearly everyone in the convention hall in a powerful display of unity as the entire crowd chanted, "Bring them home," when John Poland and Rachel Goldberg Poland spoke, demanding the release of their son, Hirsch. And we were all called to action by Michelle Obama, who told us to do something, to get involved, to make phone calls, to knock on doors, to contribute, and to mobilize our community. And that's what we're doing here today. To reflect on key takeaways from the convention and talk about what we can do as Democrats to win in November. Jewish Dems has the tools in place for you, and we really hope that you get involved and stay involved in our work. To lead our conversation today, our excellent CEO, Haley Soifer, will engage with our special guests, starting with my old friend, Elon Goldenberg, the Director of Jewish Outreach and Policy Advisor for the Harris-Walz campaign. As a foreign policy expert and defense expert, Elon is well-versed in the complexity of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Iran, and the Middle East as a whole. Elon is working day and night to ensure that Jewish voters have the information they need to make an informed decision, informed by facts, not disinformation, at the polls to ensure that we all stay engaged. I was proud to publish an opinion piece yesterday about why Elon was the right choice for this critically important role, and we'll post that in the chat in a second. I'm so glad he could join us today. We've come a long way since our days in Central Hebrew High School, Elon. Haley, over to you to lead a conversation with Elon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Izzy. Thanks to all of you for joining. I want to especially thank Elon, who's going to join us for our discussion now. We are so lucky as a Jewish community to have Elon as the Jewish Outreach Director for the Harris-Walz campaign. I've known Elon for some time, as Izzy has, in his role most recently as the Vice President's Middle East advisor. Elon is a foreign policy and national security expert and knows our community so well. He knows the issues of importance to Jewish voters, and we're thrilled that you could join us today, Elon. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Haley.
Of course. So Elon, we'll get into the convention and what we're going to do next shortly. But first, I'd like to hear a little bit about the policy. This is so important, and this is really what you bring to this role. You have extensive experience working on the Middle East, including Israel. And before taking on this role on the campaign, as mentioned, you were special advisor on the Middle East to Vice President Harris. In her acceptance speech last week, she reiterated her steadfast commitment to Israel's security and safety, as well as efforts to bring home the hostages as part of a ceasefire. What should Jewish voters know about Vice President Harris's position on Israel and the Middle East?
Thanks, Haley. And first, I should just say thank you for the kind introduction to all the incredible work JDCA does, and Izzy also. Always fun to be on Zooms with former Hebrew high school friends. It's that's kind of a rarity, but it's great. It's just another sign of how deep our community is all interwoven. So yeah, on Israel, I should say, as Haley you mentioned, I was the Vice President's Middle East advisor previously, including on October 7th and in the months afterwards. And I can tell you what I saw. And the bottom line is, first of all, even going back far before October 7th, she has a clear, long record of support for Israel and unwavering support for Israel's right to defend itself and to make sure Israel has what it needs to defend itself. And that's what I saw after October 7th as first and foremost on her mind, and was really kind of a North Star for everything. Israel was, as we heard at the convention, we heard her talk about, Israel was attacked on October 7th by Hamas, a terrorist organization who started this war. And Israel has a right and a duty to protect its citizens. And that was the beginning position of where she was coming from. Now, a few things that I observed working for her. One, she was just really prioritized and dedicated to this issue post October 7th. We talk about, and think some have heard, she's been on 25 phone calls with President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu. But I should say, it's not just about being on the calls. The reality is you don't all try to put your two best athletes in the same position on the field over and over again, right? Like, for the most part, you try to have the president and vice president doing different things unless it's something really important. And so for her to prioritize that time, and it's not just the calls, it's the deliberations before the calls, the national security discussions with the president and afterwards, and feeling like it was very important for her voice to be part of that discussion constantly, and making time for that issue was just a sign of how much she prioritized it, including doing the call just the day before her acceptance speech at the National Convention last week. So for me, that was something significant. On top of the fact, she regularly engaged with President Herzog and established a channel there. She went to the region early on and met with leaders from Egypt, Jordan, the UAE, and talked to others. And there she was really prioritizing, I think, something else that shows her understanding of policy and her understanding of Israel's security, which is from the very beginning, from as early as like November and December, she was talking about the day after in Gaza. And that is really important because the only way to, in the long run, defeat Hamas is actually establish some kind of a substitute, an alternative over time, an alternative security system, alternative, governance, alternative economics and reconstruction. And she was focused on that and had us, her team, focused on that from the very beginning. And it's vital, for any long-term defeat of Hamas. Beyond that, she engaged regularly with the hostage families and continues to. She elevated the issue of sexual violence on October 7th by hosting an event at the White House on that particular issue, the highest profile, using her platform to really educate the American public on that issue. Again, something that she mentioned very clearly during her convention speech. Overall, I would say her approach has been, and as we've described it, the policy is, let's bring the hostages home and get a ceasefire that keeps Israel secure, that gets the hostages home, that ends suffering of Palestinians in Gaza, and that ensures Palestinians ultimately have realize their rights for security, for freedom, and for self-determination. That was what she laid out at the convention, and it's been her position really all along.
Great, thank you, Ilan. So we had quite a week last week at this convention. Not only were there the 4 nights of excitement at the United Center, really something I've never seen or experienced quite before. For those who have been to conventions before, as I have, things like a roll call and speeches are typically not quite as energizing and just as positive and joyful as this one felt. It really felt like Kamala Harris was setting that tone of joy and positivity throughout those 4 nights, which was quite remarkable to experience. But in addition to that, there was also Jewish programming throughout the convention done by the campaign as well as JDCA and other Jewish organizations, which was great. Every day, multiple events. And throughout the convention, Jews and non-Jews alike, Democrats reaffirmed our commitment to Israel's security, demanding a return of the hostages, and voiced support for efforts to combat anti-Semitism. This is all also enshrined in the Democratic Party platform that was adopted on Monday night at the convention. What moments for you really stood out as particularly significant and meaningful for American Jews?
Sure. No, I think it was just an incredible time in Chicago, and what an inspiring and unifying week that we had on our way to winning this election. A few things that really stood out for me. Maybe I'll talk about, well, 3 or 4. One is the vice president's speech. That was ultimately the most important. The time she dedicated in that speech to being very clear on her position about Israel and the situation in Gaza. And for me, frankly, I've heard it many, many times before because she has said it many times before. And it was really just the position she's had all along, but very important to reiterate on that big stage to the entire country. And so I think that was very reaffirming for the American Jewish community to hear, especially her support, her unwavering support for Israel and just absolute clarity on making sure Israel will have what it needs to defend itself, including from any threats from Iran. Second, as you talked about, the appearance by the Goldberg Polans, I mean, was just, and Hirsch's parents was remarkable, and just their speech was incredibly moving. Maybe even just as moving was the reaction in the room, just sending a very clear message about where the Democratic Party stands on Israel and where it stands on bringing the hostages home and on the families. And it was a spontaneous chants of entire audience chanting, "Bring them home," thousands of people, which I just found incredibly, incredibly moving and a beautiful moment. Third, I would say, the second gentleman's speech, and also his engagement with JDCA, with the event that he did on anti-Semitism, which was really important. A couple of other things I just find very exciting about Kamala Harris's candidacy. She is of the American Jewish community, not just through the second gentleman, but on her own and her relationships in the American Jewish community that go back very far, right, into her time in San Francisco and years. And to, she likes to talk about, moving around with basically raising tzedakah with the little blue and white boxes from the Jewish National Fund, like going back, when she was a girl. And with her and with the second gentleman, we have the opportunity to really bring Jewish culture and life into the White House and introduce it to the American public in a pretty unique and historic way. So, we had during her vice presidency the first mezuzah on the vice president's residence, the first menorah lighting at the vice president's residence, the first seder at the vice president's residence, and you saw it with the second gentleman's speech talking about whether it's in the previews, there was discussion about his bar mitzvah, and there was talk of him going to Hebrew school. So something Izzy and I can relate to. I mean, it's just great to see all of that being brought with such great pride and joy to the American public. So I thought that was also really great. And with the JDCA event, also emphasizing just the leadership that he has shown. And let's be clear, like that leadership, it comes from her first, right? For a number on anti-Semitism, which goes back to her time as district attorney in San Francisco. She tried a hate crime case against an attacker of Elie Wiesel, and that was not an easy case necessarily. She really pushed on the hate crime designation and successfully got that conviction. To her time when Haley was her national security advisor in the Senate, and the first significant resolution that she pushed forward in the Senate was on anti-Semitism. It was a bipartisan resolution. To now the second gentleman's work, which he was discussing at your event, on anti-Semitism, which she encouraged him to take that role. She asked him to take that role and really show leadership on anti-Semitism and the national anti-Semitism strategy, which is really something unprecedented that, thank goodness, we put together before the challenges of the past year, because it really had us prepared with over 100 different specific, actionable government actions that the administration was following through on, and the second gentleman described some of that work during your event. So for me, like those are the real highlights, in addition, of course, to just all the other wonderful things and important issues that were being addressed that matter, that make us Democrats and are why, across the board. So that's maybe I'll stop there. It was just a great week.
It was a great week, and something that I think has not gotten enough attention is the fact that we started the week by passing an extremely strong Democratic Party platform that not only enshrines Democrats' strong support of the Jewish community and Jewish values on every key issue that are of importance to the Jewish electorate, but also enshrines our deep support of Israel. The platform, which really represents where Democrats and the Democratic Party stand on these key issues, includes an affirmation of a strong, secure, and democratic Israel is in the vital interests of the United States. It unequivocally condemns the attacks of October 7th. It affirms that we support Israel's right to self-defense. It talks about our ironclad commitment to Israel's security. All of this is outlined in the talking points that I know that we put in the chat, in addition to the vice president's strong record on this issue. But it's important that we have this information at the ready, because I know there's a lot of discussions being had about where we stand on these key issues. And it's important that we're ready to respond with the truth. So you all have these points in the chat. We'll send them out after this call as well. But let's make sure that, especially if you see something that is questionable, or let's face it, just lies, that we respond with the truth. Okay, so we are here to really encourage everyone to get involved, to talk about how we are going to heed Michelle Obama's call to do something. So, Ilan, what specifically are you encouraging Jewish voters to do to help elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in just a little less than 10 weeks?
So I have a long list here, but
Great.
we'll just focus on a few. Starting with the most obvious and direct, which is vote, register to vote, and make a plan to vote. That's the most important thing. I hope everybody on this call is doing that. And so I imagine early voting will start relatively soon. Second, we're going to be doing a lot more programming through Jewish voters for Harris Walz. We launched our national newsletter a few days ago. There'll be more newsletters with opportunities to volunteer, to do various things. We're planning on a national organizing call next week, and we'll have some additional programming over the next couple of months at the national level, as well as obviously in the key battlegrounds. And so sign up for the newsletter, and for the overall list of Jewish voters for Harris Walz, which I think it already is in the chat. In addition, look, all the other things we know and do every cycle and are just so important to do, knocking on doors, going to battleground states and knocking on doors, making phone calls, writing postcards, talking to your friends. Maybe that's the most important things, talking to your friends who aren't sure, explaining to them, her position and where she is. So we have a site, gokamalaharris.com, which is also in the chat. You can put your own zip code and state there, and it will give you all kinds of different events and things that you can potentially be doing to get involved. Go there, get involved, find things to do, spend a half an hour, spend an hour, spend a day. Any amount of time is valuable to do this. And so those are, I think, most of the things that we're pushing for right now. As we get closer, we'll also have very Jewish specific oriented type events and activities around get out the vote, and around voter engagement. But and like I said, maybe I'll end where I started on this, or maybe not exactly where I started, but the most straightforward things, which are, in addition to voting yourself, it's talking to your community, getting out there. I think a lot of people who are on this call are leaders in their community. They are involved in their community, and so take the messages we're talking about here, use the JDCA stuff. We have other things we'll be putting out there on key messages, and just get that word around and talk to you both. Make sure all of your friends who are voting for her are out there voting, and make sure that your friends who you're not sure about, you're talking to them and bringing them over. Because the most important thing, like real persuasion, happens like one-to-one. Real persuasion happens like when somebody trusted in the community turns to somebody else and makes that case. And you all are our messengers, you all are our leaders. And so go make the case as far and wide as we can between now and November 5th.
Great. Thank you so much, Ilan. And just to underscore, this is something JDCA thinks a lot about. The Jewish vote is absolutely going to be critical in this election. We know it will be close, and we know because of our turnout rates and where we live that Jewish voters can and will make a difference in this election. And that is what JDCA is focused on, getting out the Jewish vote in support of Kamala Harris and other Democrats who share our values, especially in those battleground states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, and North Carolina. We are focused on those 7 states, but also for those House races that are going to ensure that Democrats win back the House. We're doing this work beyond those states as well. So get involved with our efforts. We have phone banks and text banks every day except for Shabbat. We're working on this 24/6. And I'm also going to post in the chat our new website called Do Something that gives you multiple links for how to get involved. I also want to point out that if you want to share your support of the Harris Wells ticket loud and proud, like a Doug for First Mensch t-shirt, you can you can also get them on the JDCA website. I'm going to be wearing various versions of this every day between now and November 5th. I encourage everyone to also do so. We've got buttons and posters and other things. Okay, I've been told Brad Schneider has joined, so we can move to our next speaker. But thank you, Ilan, and we will make sure that everybody is signed up for to join the Harris campaign as well in your Jewish outreach efforts. Thank you for your leadership. We are with you, and we're going to be working with you 24/6 until November 5th.
Thank you, Haley. And thank you everyone who joined the call and JDCA for all the great work you do.
Thank you so much. Okay, Congressman Schneider is now with us from the great state of Illinois. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm happy to join you. I'm running in between meetings in my district. You can see I made a quick stop at an ice cream store. So
wonderful,
here I am.
wonderful. Okay, continuing our president's tradition of love of ice cream. Wonderful. Okay, so last week, you, Congressman, and your constituents welcomed Democrats, including, of course, Vice President Harris and Governor Walz to Chicago. What did it mean to host the Democratic convention in Chicago this year? And what were the most meaningful takeaways from that amazing convention week for you?
Well, thank you. It was an incredible week. And first, I'm thrilled that Chicago was able to bring everyone to our community to show off Chicago and show off the Democratic Party. And I've been joking. I said, I don't know how much Governor Pritzker paid Murphy to go out of town and take his laws with him, but anything that could have gone wrong last week didn't. Everything was pitch perfect. I think that the most important thing what we saw last week was the unity of the Democratic Party, the commitment to a vision that puts our country first, our children first, keeps our promises across generations, and has a vision for the future that is not just optimistic, but is and continues Americanship in the world.
Great. Specifically as a Jewish American, can you talk about which moments from the convention really stood out for you? I know that you are one of the foremost leaders when it comes to the U.S.-Israel relationship in Congress and in supporting President and Vice President's efforts to combat anti-Semitism. If you could speak about how those two themes were also woven into the convention.
Sure. There was one moment that stands out above all else. I'm hoping you can hear me.
We can hear you.
There's one
your
moment that's
video, we're
okay.
losing a bit of the video, but we can hear you. I think we're good now.
Okay. The moment that stood out above everything else was when Rachel Goldberg and John Poland came to speak. They're from Chicago. John's sister Abby is a very dear friend, and when they approached the podium, you could feel their tension, you could see their tension, but the welcome they received, people standing up and chanting, "Bring them home now," and the response to their words. They're extraordinary words, Wilmo, but that's something that will stick with me forever. I think there were several other moments when Vice President Harris got to the foreign policy part of her comments, and I describe it. The windup was talking about Ukraine and the importance of ensuring that the U.S. stays committed to Ukraine and Ukraine defeats Russia. But that was a good windup, and then she threw a pitch right down the middle for a strike when she talked about supporting Israel's security, qualitative military edge, and a vision for the future for the Palestinian people. Those things together made a huge difference, and so I was extremely proud of that moment. The fact that just walking around the hall and running into people from my community, from all parts of my community, folks from Washington, there was a kosher hot dog stand, and talking to people from across the country, some who were Lubavitch Chassids having their Glatt kosher hot dog, and some who were just here because they could get a kosher hot dog. It was great. So there's so many really poignant points, but the two speeches stand out.
Yeah, and I can attest there actually were a few minions that took place in that convention hall as well. Perhaps near the kosher stand. So in addition to those moments, the Democratic Party also passed the strongest and most pro-Israel policy platform in our history last week for either party. Could you speak about the Democratic Party platform's support of Israel and issues of importance to Jewish Americans?
Absolutely. And let me draw the contrast. The Republican platform of two sentences. It was kind of a nod in passing. The Democrat platform talked about security for Israel, the ironclad U.S.-Israel relationship, went into detail, and is something that isn't just words on a page. It's reflected in the actions of the Biden administration and the commitments. And I missed what Alon said, but I'm sure he talked about it, of what a Harris-Walz administration would provide. I could not be more enthused about where we are pointing to as a party. Within the Democratic caucus, support for Israel has remained strong throughout this conflict. That doesn't mean it's unanimous. We have always had, I can go back 25 years, and there were on the edges of both parties, you have people who question the strategic interest of the United States in our relationship with Israel. I think you can look at the past year and understand our
Might have frozen again. Oh, there, you're back.
I'm back.
You're back.
Welcome
I bet
to
it's
rural
wonderful
Illinois.
ice cream. I'm questioning the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I'm on. I'm not even on Wi-Fi. Let me try to get on the Wi-Fi. But ask the next question. I'm going to try to switch to their Wi-Fi.
Okay, so the purpose of this call is to do something. It's to do something. Nobody wants to wake up on November 6th wondering what else they could have done. So what are the three most important things that we all must do between now and November?
Well, the first thing is vote, and we need to make sure everyone we know gets out and vote. It's not enough to go to a rally. It's not enough to watch the convention. We need to make sure that everyone we know is committed to casting their ballot. And in states where there's early voting and mail-in balloting, the earlier we vote, the more energy we can spend helping to make sure everybody else votes. We've got to be willing to talk about what's going on. Talk about politics, talk about the difference between the Democratic platform, the Democratic ticket, and the Republicans. People are going to ask us about Project 2025. Should we be worried? I was asked that earlier this morning and said, yes, we should be very worried. And I have an answer to Project 2025, and it's Victory 2024. We have to make sure that we win. So it's talk to people in your neighborhood, talk to people at work, at school, strangers in the grocery store, and say, here's what's at stake and here's what's so important. As Jewish Democrats, we need to be willing to stand up and say, it's really important for Jews to understand that this administration and the Biden-Harris administration, the Harris-Walz administration will be not just a friend to Israel, but a friend to the Jewish community. At a time when we're facing circular threats, we need to make sure that people understand everything that's at stake.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Congressman. I know you're out and about meeting with voters, so we appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much. And thank you.
Thank you. It was good to be here, and sorry about the connection.
That's okay. That's okay. We heard you. We did.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Take care.
Great. Our next speaker is George Latimer. Let's just confirm we've got George. George, there you are. Great.
Hey, how are you?
Okay. Hi. We're so grateful to have you join us. George, for those who don't know, is the Democratic congressional candidate in New York 16. With the help of JDCA, George defeated incumbent Congressman Jamal Bowman in a difficult and contentious June primary, which you, George, won with the overwhelming support of Jewish voters. And we were so proud to support you because we know you align with our values. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us today. We were so grateful that you also joined us last week at the convention where you discussed your primary, where, as mentioned, you defeated an incumbent, something that's particularly difficult to do. Could you tell us about your race and lessons that we can all draw from it as we prepare to ensure Democratic victories in November?
Well, thanks, Haley. The interesting thing about this race, I think, was that there was a national interpretation of what happened in the race and then a practical reality on the ground. And in the Democratic convention that I was at last week in Chicago, the phrase "do something" came out. And I think that's really what was the practical reality of my race. We did something. We organized on the ground. There was an independent group called Westchester Unites, which organized and worked very hard in the Jewish community of this district. We have one of the highest Jewish populations in our district, but it's a diverse district. It is a district that's almost 30% Hispanic, 20% African American. It is the southern half of Westchester County, suburban county outside of New York City, and then a sliver of the North Bronx, heavily African American. And in that setting, we understood, and our supporters, both inside and outside the Jewish community, understood that we had to have a good ground game, and we did. And that ground game was kind of overlooked by the national media, which only saw the money that came in. And I did get money from a number of different sources, although I had more, as a higher percentage of fundraising from within my district than the incumbent Jamal Bowman did. He tapped into a nationwide network of supporters, and heavily within the pro-Palestinian community and what I would call the far left community. I'm plenty progressive as a public official, but I happen to support the state of Israel. I didn't know, when supporting Israel became not progressive. Suffice it to say that the race itself was run with a lot of attention to it, perhaps disproportionate attention to the amount of money raised. We had a lot of money on our side. He had quite a bit of money as well. We had more. But at the end of the day, what we also had was ground troops, and we went into all of the different subsections of the district. We had a message in Spanish to the Spanish-speaking people who lived in this community. We reached out, and I campaigned personally. He's a good bit younger than I am, about 25 years younger than I am, but I out-campaigned him. I went to more events and more parts of the district than he did. We won significantly, 58% to 41% of the municipalities in Westchester County. We won quite a lot of them at 80% numbers, which is just unheard of, and against an incumbent. He's a two-term incumbent. Now, I currently am the county executive of Westchester County. I've been at the state legislature, so I have an existing footprint. But the message for November is that the work we do on the ground is every bit as important as the media attention that we have. You must have in the modern campaigns, you must be on TV, you must be in digital ads, you have to do all of the different things that modern technology requires to do to be in the mailboxes, but you must organize on the ground. And we beat him in a number of different areas, but we beat him on the ground, and his force on the ground was not as significant. Looking ahead to November, where there are close races, where we can do something and be on people's doorsteps at the major events that we have to be at, that gives us the best possibility for success.
Right. It also looks like the Jewish vote made a critical difference for you. I know that in those precincts that are heavily Jewish populated in Westchester County, the turnout was higher and the support for you was much higher, just
It was incredible.
demonstrating how
It really
important
was incredible.
that Jewish vote is in close elections.
And what I would, if I could just add to one point about this, the Jewish vote, the people who are Jewish in this area, care deeply about the protection of the state of Israel. But they also care, if you consider, and I am Roman Catholic, if you consider the Jewish teaching of Tikkun Olam, to repair the world, they also care about a woman's right to choose. They also care about not only fighting anti-Semitism, but they are supporters of efforts to fight back against prejudice to the AAPI community, to the Latino migrant community, to the Black community, and the LGBTQ community. So the Jewish voter was not simply just looking at that one issue, but a range of issues for which we have to appeal. And I think if we can show that we care about climate change, we care about affordable housing and those issues as well, then we have the best possible chance for success.
Absolutely. And your primary really demonstrated when you get out and do the work and knock on those doors, we can win. So that is yet another important lesson. So if elected in November, and we know this is a blue district, so it's looking good, how would you deliver for Jewish American voters in Congress? And how important is it that Democrats take back control of the House? And we're almost there.
Well, if you look at, and Representative Schneider referenced this, I have plenty of Republican friends. We've worked together in the state legislature here in my county, officials, and found common ground. But the National Republican Party, under the thumb of Donald Trump, is not the Republican Party of John McCain. It's not the party of Mitt Romney. They are radicals. And while their position on Israel might be consistent with certain things that we all agree with, their position on a woman's right to choose, their position on LGBTQ rights, their position on the environment, and their position on democracy is not consistent with Jewish values, or for that matter, any of us who hold progressive values across the board. So controlling the government, as Donald Trump proposes to do, if he's able to control the House and the Senate along with it, they're going to do sweeping legislation and sweeping administrative actions that will, I think, change the face of America dramatically. We know that there is an opportunity for us to win all three of those entities, and we could, in theory, lose all three of those entities. So I think, from a Democratic standpoint, we have to work hard to show that that what Donald Trump wants to do is not good for the nation, and the Congress members and the senators who come in have proven to be lockstep in support of him. There are individuals who've shown some independence, but not many of them. And at the Democratic convention, you had Adam Kinzinger speak, and of course, not at the Democratic convention, but Lynn Cheney and a few other Republicans who dared to break with Trump. Romney, they're out of office now. So Democrats winning in November is essential if we want to have the kind of democracy that we want to have going forward. I think it's important to understand, in terms of delivering for Jewish Americans, that we show support for the state of Israel. We understand there is a negotiating process that goes on in the Middle East. America has played an honest broker role. We work on the Arab side of the street, work on the Jewish side of the street. I don't think it profits us to get involved in the middle of the Jewish political world with Prime Minister Netanyahu and the other people who might run against him in the future. Right now, we want to carve out a way to get the hostages home, cessation to stop, humanitarian aid to come in, and then a future for Gaza that represents a peaceful, demilitarized future, so that folks who live in Israel would have some sense of confidence that they're not going to get rocket fire from over the border and an attack like happened on October 7th. But that will not come easily. And I think those of us in Congress would do well to work through our system and work through trying to get the President and the Secretary of State to work on those things as a package, and not to go for the easy slogans. When somebody says ceasefire now, no one wants to see civilian deaths. I don't, you don't. But we also know that there'll be civilian deaths in the future if what we negotiate today is poorly done and opens the door for further hostilities from Hamas down the line. Then in Congress, there's the whole other issue of how we deal with anti-Semitism in this society. It's growing. I'm a county official right now. We're working hard to fight anti-Semitism in all those areas of prejudice. But I'm concerned when schools get back into session, in the fall, what will we see on certain college campuses? What will we see in the community in our response to anti-Semitism domestically? And I think that's an area where this Congress can take action, legislative action, to be able to address issues that matter to the Jewish community. And then I'd finally just repeat some of the things I've said before. Most of the people that I've met with who are Jewish Americans, they do care about a woman's right to choose. They do care about the environment. They do care about affordability in the society. And I think we are the more responsible party to address those issues rather than what we're seeing on the Republican side. And not from all Republicans, but certainly from Donald Trump and the people that are closely attached to him. I think we need to keep them away from power and have a rational dialogue between Democrats and reasonable Republicans about where the country goes forward.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for everything that you're doing in Westchester, and we look forward to working with you in Congress. We're so glad that you won that primary. We were proud to support
Thank
you,
you.
and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you for your support and have a wonderful day. We'll be working together in the days to come.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I'm now excited to welcome Julie Zebrak, a lawyer, former Department of Justice official, JDCA New Leadership Council member, and a Maryland delegate to the Democratic Convention. Perhaps most importantly, in front of mind for many of us, Julie was the woman behind the Jewish Women for Kamala call a few weeks ago, which more than 30,000 people joined. This was all Julie's doing. Thank you, Julie, with partnership from Jewish Women for Kamala and the Facebook.
Yes, it took a village, as we say. It was a great experience, and for folks who missed it, we'll send you the video, no problem.
They can check out the link. It was awesome. So Julie, the convention was filled with energy, unity, hope. As a delegate, you were at the center of it. You were on the floor for all of it, including that epic 75-minute roll call vote, which there is a playlist on Spotify if people want to download that roll call playlist. It was amazing. What was it like to experience the convention as a delegate on the floor?
So thank you for asking, and thank you for having me. And I'm going to do a quick plug also for Mamas for Kamala, which I also co-founded. Which includes grandmas and mamalas and all that. I'm so proud to be involved with JDCA and be part of the New Leadership Council. And I'm really honored to be here. I have to tell y'all, so I'm not into sports. This was my Super Bowl. This was like everything that I want to do all day, every day. It was just an incredible honor to even be at the convention center. For folks who've never been to convention, you're there from like 4 p.m. till 11:30 or midnight, but the day starts with whole meetings everywhere and on all the topics that we all care about, whether it's reproductive rights or climate change or national security or Jewish issues. Like all day you get to go to meetings and like talk about what you care about, but then coming to the convention center, it was just incredible. The energy, I mean, everybody, you've heard about the joy was real. Like even waiting in the, hour-long security line to get in, because they had very tight security. Thank you very much. Everybody's wearing their swag, they've got their buttons, they've got their hats, they have this, everybody's friendly, you're all talking to each other. And that's just in the security line. You get in, everybody, like as delegates, you go and you want to save your seat. And I was so excited to be a Maryland delegate. We happen to be right next to the stage. And you're sitting there and you get there really early. So you kind of get up and down, you go walk the halls, and just even the energy in the halls in this arena, you're seeing elected officials, you're seeing, influencers that you've seen on Instagram, or you're seeing celebrities, and you're seeing old friends, political friends, camp friends, friends from all over the country who are in this fight with you. And it's just, the energy is incredible. And that's just in the halls. Then you go and you sit down for real and the program is starting. And we just, had one amazing speaker. For those of you who got to watch parts or all of it, one amazing speaker after another. And I have to say that the night of the roll call, the energy, the pride that all of us, it was such like a patriotic moment as Americans, as for me as a Marylander, for everybody going around the room. You know, the Wisconsinites had their cheese heads on. Maryland, we only flew our little Maryland flag, thank goodness. We didn't have to dress funny or anything. But hearing the pride of everyone in their states, the cheers, the energy, I mean, it just, honestly, I know I sound ridiculous, but like it just made you proud to be an American. And there's definitely points throughout the convention where I was sitting there reflecting, like, is this weird that for 4 days I'm sitting here like cheering about my government and my policies? Like this concept that you are so excited to hear about, you know, hear from elected officials or from you know, celebrities or, you know, whoever about things that you care about. When you step back and think about it, you're like, what a wild concept. But here you are surrounded by like-minded people who want the same things. We're all on the same team. And it really just, you know, was just this inspiring moment. And then to be there for this woman who, for many of you, you've heard me talk before, I've been on Team Kamala since 2019, to be there for this moment that we've been waiting for 5 years. And, you know, many of you like Haley for more than 5 years, to have her and have this amount of joy and energy and support in the room, and in the speakers and in the remarks. It just really was a historical moment. And, you know, not least of which, and I know we've already covered it, but I do want to give it a shout out, the focus on the Jewish issues. Watching the second gentleman stand there and talk about his Judaism, the brisket at Passover, like we cannot take that for granted. We've never had this before, and we always have to remember that, I think. And when you're looking at the history of the first woman president and the first woman president of color, and just all these firsts, like it's really a big deal to even hear the second gentleman cover these issues. And it was just so meaningful. And, you know, honestly, it was just like the best 4 days. I don't think I can ever top it. All right.
Okay. What was Marilyn's song in the roll call?
Oh God, don't ask me that. I don't even
Okay,
remember.
we will consult the playlist. We will
I
consult
think it was not a Maryland songs.
Okay.
I think it was, oh God, I just forgot.
We'll consult the playlist and get
All
back
right,
to you.
sorry. I'm not very
It
good.
was an amazing moment. And and you know, for those who haven't seen, you can Google this. The Morning Joe did this side-by-side contrast of the Republican roll call, which was, you know, the typical kind of mundane roll call versus what was the 75-minute party. Wild, epic party.
Yeah.
And it really was a first in the amount of joy and excitement. And I was with you. It felt like a Super Bowl for those who love sports. It was our Super Bowl.
For Washington Times.
Okay, so Julie, you are extremely committed. You're on the ground here with me in Maryland. What are you going to be doing between now and November?
So many fun things. So, you know, one of the things that's really been important this year is working with Jewish voters and talking to Jewish voters and making sure that they understand where the vice president is and where her team is on supporting Israel, combating anti-Semitism, and standing with Jewish Americans. And so many of us on this call are working on that, and I will continue to work on that with Jewish folks I know around the country. In terms of the other ways I'm going to do something, so I co-founded Mamas for Kamala, which is relevant to any of us. It's basically works through Mamas for Kamala and through JDCA. It's working with volunteers to meet people where they are and urge them to get involved in the campaign. And so a lot of what I'm going to be doing is organizing and working with women around the country who and their families, their kids, and bringing them into getting rolling up their sleeves. And so that of course will involve things like text banking, phone banking, and knocking on doors. But when I say meeting people where they are, it's helping volunteers who want to touch the campaign and be a part of history realize how many other ways they can contribute. Of course, some of that's relational, talking to your friends, making sure they're knowing who to vote for and why you're voting, and giving them permission to follow your lead in this election. But it's also reminding people that feeding a field office of 20 somethings is helping elect the first, woman president. It's driving young canvassers who don't have a car so they can knock on the doors, and you stay in the car and you just drive. That's helping. And so it's bringing people in and helping organize them to make sure they know that even though there's very traditional ways we need help are maybe not their cup of tea, we can still get them involved in a way that's meaningful, and of course with their kids and grandkids as well. And then I have to say that at the end, I probably will go to my home state of Georgia and help knock on doors. And I look forward to doing that, hopefully with my daughter who's in college there. And then other than that, I think I will sign up to just text voters, because you can do that in the grocery line. You can do it on your phone. They don't know that you're the one texting. It's through an app and all this, but I think that's a great way to do it. And you can, to get involved, and it is a really good way for introverts to do it.
Okay, so for all the introverts out there and all those that are in blue states that want to travel, we actually have a travelers program. We can help you go to your home state of Georgia or wherever it is and get connected with the campaign there. We're going to post in the chat our traveler program link. So if you want to travel to get out the vote, we'll help you do that. As much as I wish that Maryland was a solidly blue state, Julie, we also have a competitive Senate race. And so we'll be involved in that race as well. If you want to say a few things about that, making sure that that
Angela also Brooks,
not one of the very few Black women in the Senate. What can we do to help change history?
Right. Well, I'm glad you asked, and I'm super excited to support and urge all my Maryland friends to support Angela Also Brooks. And for those of you who are looking to wait for ways to donate or support outside of the state of Maryland, I urge you to take a look at Angela. She spoke during the convention. There may be a way that we can pull her remarks and share them with this community. But Angela is incredible. Like the vice president, she has a history in being a public servant and being a prosecutor. And she is really, an exceptional candidate who understands exactly where we need her to be on Israel. And we know she is there. And I think for those of you in Maryland who missed it this week, I think Haley, you were part of the discussion with Angela about her positions on Israel. And I heard there were 200 people there in attendance, which is great for a week in the summer. But I think for those of you who aren't familiar with Angela, in the state of Maryland, we are really lucky to have her. And we know what's at stake in Maryland, which is beating Larry Hogan, who would both cause us to lose a Senate seat, which, as you all know, we can't afford to lose a Senate seat at all. But we also need to defeat Larry Hogan so that we can continue towards the march of codifying Roe versus Wade and making sure that women in this country are protected when they need to get an abortion. And we know that Angela will take every step possible she can to make sure that women are protected. And we know that we cannot trust former Governor Larry Hogan to do that. And so I'm happy to talk more to folks offline, but
well, I guess my point here is no matter what state you're in, it's not just the presidential. You likely have a competitive House race nearby, potentially Senate as well. So we have ways for you to get involved in all of those. So thank you so much, Julie. Our last speaker is Daniel, and Daniel Silverberg. Are you on in this green room now? Because I think, okay, let's see. Daniel Silverberg is joining us, and we're going to keep this brief. Daniel, I know you're here. Daniel, there you are. Okay.
Oh,
We
okay,
found you, Daniel.
terrific. Sorry about that.
That's okay. All right, Daniel, we're gonna close with you. Daniel, we're so happy that you are a member of JDCA's New Leaders Council. You are a national security expert. You're a former Hill staffer. You are also an advocate working with the hostage families. And I know that you are friends with and work closely with the Polans. If you could briefly talk about what that moment meant at last week's convention in terms of the embrace in that convention hall of Rachel and John Poland in their fight for the release of their son Hirsch, and just symbolically what it also meant for them and for Israelis.
Absolutely. It was such an incredible moment, wasn't it? I was impacted by that moment and the convention generally in three ways, really on three levels. First, as a Democrat, that moment with Rachel and John gave me such a sense of reassurance and pride in our party. The warm embrace, I know for John and Rachel, was both surprising, but totally overwhelming and organic, and a balm, I felt like, for the entire convention. It was a unifying moment. And I know that they, amidst months of darkness, felt extraordinarily heartened, lightened in some ways by that moment, as did I vicariously.
Yeah.
I
I think there was a real concern in general going into the convention that there would be a ton of protesters, anti-Israel protesters, pro-Palestinian protesters, and that somehow those voices would be heard and felt and they would have an impact. And I think there was recognition throughout those 4 days that was absolutely not the case. I know the press was interested in, the 10 protesters that might have been outside the hall, but they had far less presence, less of a voice, less of an impact. And I think there might have also been a sense of relief in that hall that John and Rachel were so warmly embraced, not just by the Jews in the convention hall, because let's face it, there aren't that many of us, by everyone.
Yep. Yeah. And that was with John and Rachel, and that was across the board, Haley, 100%. As a Jewish parent of a college student, I felt it palpably when I went to the JDCA event with the second gentleman. And when I felt like, was looking me in the eyes and saying, Jewish kids need to be able to go to school and feel protected. That was a core message I felt like throughout the convention. We didn't see the protests. There was a message of unity. And then I also felt it as a foreign policy professional, as someone who is so-called pro-Israel, but I think pro-America, in the vice president's speech. Those 4 lines that she had on Israel, I felt like were very telling on where she is. And her comments on a two-state solution were dead center on where Democrats have been for the last 3 decades. So bottom line, the thrust of this call is, what can you do? For me, it's leave that convention with a sense of pride. Operate with a sense of pride. People are saying, well, I don't have 2 great choices here. Yes, you do. Be proud as a Jew and as a Democrat that we have a nominee like Kamala Harris, and go out and express that pride. Don't run away from it.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you for your leadership. I know you've written about foreign policy issues and national security around the convention. We're going to share that with everyone. But to close, we're going to move to Jill Goldenberg, one of our board members, to tell us in summary what we can all do. Jill, over to you to wrap our event.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. I am very lucky to be a JDCA board member and the vice chair of the programming committee. Today, you heard from Ilan Goldenberg, the new Jewish Outreach and Policy Director of the Harris Walls campaign, Brad Schneider, George Latimer, Julie Zebrak, Daniel Silverberg. We are so lucky to have all gotten to be in Chicago last week, but not everybody was. And it is up to you all and all of us to take the excitement, to take the pride, and bring it to life. Step up, say Hineni, here I am. I'm ready to actually elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. But you can't do it just by sitting on a webinar like this. You got to do something. Thank you to Michelle Obama, who gave such an extraordinary speech telling us to do something. And I hope you've gotten that message throughout today, where all of us are already doing things, but it's time for the next 70, 69, how many? Haley, because you're always so good at this. Where are we? 69 days, 68 days?
69 includes election day. If we're talking about right up until election day, it's 68. But Tuesday
Okay.
was 10 weeks. Let's just look at it weeks. We're less than 10 weeks now.
And so many of your states have early voting. So people are starting to vote in September. So it's time. It's time to step up and do something. So how do you do that? Okay, we have a new webpage, jewishdems.org/do something. And I know somebody's going to very kindly put it. Thank you. It's now in the chat. jewishdems.org/do something. You will find all the links to everything that we've just talked about, ways to get involved with our work and actually change our world for the better. Join the text banks, join the phone banks. We, as you heard Haley say earlier, we are 24/6. We do phone banks just about every single night except Shabbat. And we want you to get involved. We want you to be on the phones. We want you to be texting, because voter contact matters. It actually, there's data that shows that the closer you are to a voter, the likelier it is that they're going to vote and that you can influence their vote. Be sure that you're up to date on everything that JDCA is doing, and join state chapters. It's all on the Do Something website. You can go there and look. And please sign up for the Travelers Program. There is nothing more persuasive for a voter than somebody showing up and saying, I care. I've gotten to do this for many, many campaigns. The reward of knocking on a door with a friend, and you go together, you get trained, and actually talking to voters whose votes you're going to influence actually feels not just good for us, but good for the country. Sign up for Jewish Voters for Harris Walz, as Elon Goldenberg said, no relation, by the way, as Elon said, and go and make sure that you are registered to vote and that nobody has kicked you off the voter rolls. Vote.gov. All of these you're going to get as a follow-up to today, but they also are on the Do Something website on jewishdems.org/do something. Okay. I hope you had a chance to click on that and go there and sign up, because together, when we fight, we win. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on many more future JDCA programs.
Thank you so much. And we posted a lot in the chat. We will follow up with everyone with all these links and more in email as well. And don't forget to get your merch. Doug for First Mensch. Let's make it happen. Happy early weekend. Shabbat Shalom. And we will be in touch. Thanks.